Shanghai, 2024, the world's busiest container port. Ships the size of skyscrapers, more cargo in a single day than some countries handle in a year. Now picture Shanghai, 1842. British gunboats in the harbor, Chinese officials signing a treaty at gunpoint, a proud empire forced to hand over Hong Kong, all because they tried to stop British merchants from selling opium to their people. Same city, same river, 182 years apart. Here's what your history books never explained. How did a nation, humiliated by 8 foreign powers, carved up like a Christmas turkey, written off as the sick man of Asia, become the second largest economy on Earth? That transformation didn't happen by accident. It wasn't luck. It was planned, calculated, executed across generations. You've watched this with your own eyes. When you were young, Made in China was a punchline. Now it's on everything you own. Most people in the West still don't understand how it happened. That changes today. Britain had a problem. The British were obsessed with Chinese tea, but had nothing China wanted. Emperor Qianlong wrote to King George III, "We possess all things. We have no use for your country's manufactures." So British merchants came up with a solution that was brilliant and evil in equal measure. Grow opium in India, smuggle it into China, create millions of addicts, use drug profits to pay for tea. It worked. Perfectly. By 1838, British parliamentary records estimated between 4 and 12 million Chinese opium addicts. That's more than London, Manchester, and Birmingham combined. Fathers who couldn't work, mothers who couldn't care for children, an entire generation destroyed. And British merchants made fortunes. When Chinese officials destroyed 20,000 chests of opium, Britain declared war, not for free trade, for drug trafficking. China lost. The Treaty of Nanking forced China to cede Hong Kong, open 5 ports, pay 21 million silver dollars, and grant British citizens immunity from Chinese law. British textbooks called this opening China to trade. Chinese textbooks call it what it was, the beginning of the century of humiliation. The Second Opium War came in 1856. Britain brought France. October 1860, they reached Beijing and found the Summer Palace. 150 years of construction, centuries of art and history. Lord Elgin ordered it burned. 3,500 British soldiers spent 3 days destroying it. He wrote in his own letters he did it to punish the emperor, to humiliate him. Today, you can still see Summer Palace artifacts in British museums. The Chinese haven't forgotten. Then came 1900, the Boxer Rebellion. 8 nations, Britain, France, the United States, Germany, Russia, Japan, Italy, Austria-Hungary, invaded China and occupied Beijing. 8 of the world's most powerful nations. Against 1. The Boxer Protocol demanded 450 million taels of silver, over $61 billion today. That was 1,300% of China's annual revenue. The debt wasn't paid off until 1939. China was still paying reparations for defending itself when World War II started. The Qing dynasty collapsed in 1911. What replaced it wasn't democracy. It was chaos. Warlords carved up the country while foreign powers kept their concession zones, extracting wealth while China bled. By the 1920s, Shanghai was divided into foreign-controlled zones where Chinese people were second-class citizens in their own country. Parks with signs saying, "No dogs or Chinese allowed." Chinese people, in China, treated like animals. Then Japan invaded. The Rape of Nanking, December 1937. 6 weeks of mass murder. Estimates range from 100,000 to 300,000 civilians killed. Tens of thousands of women raped. John Raba, a Nazi party member, stayed behind to protect civilians. Even a Nazi was horrified. The war lasted 8 years. 15 to 20 million Chinese died. Cities destroyed. Famine everywhere. Then 4 more years of civil war. By 1949, China had experienced 110 years of continuous trauma. Life expectancy? 35 years. Per capita GDP? Among the lowest in the world. The sick man of Asia wasn't a slur. It was a diagnosis. This is where most Western histories end. China was broken, irrelevant, nothing to worry about. That was the miscalculation of the century. October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong declared the People's Republic. His words, "The Chinese people have stood up." If you grew up during the Cold War, you were taught that was Communist China, the Red Menace. Here's what they didn't teach you. For Chinese people, that was the moment the century of humiliation ended. Foreign troops gone. Treaty ports closed. China controlled China. Was Mao a good leader? The Great Leap Forward killed tens of millions. The Cultural Revolution destroyed lives. But the Communist Party delivered something no Chinese government had managed since 1839. Sovereignty. Unity. The ability to say no to foreign powers. That bought them legitimacy. 1978, Deng Xiaoping took charge and made probably the most consequential economic decision of the 20th century. He opened China up. Not to democracy, but to foreign investment. Markets. Capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Western economists said it wouldn't work. You can't have market capitalism without political freedom. Everyone knew that. Deng ignored them. When Nixon shook hands with Mao in 1972, you probably thought America was winning, teaching China how the world works. Here's what Nixon didn't know. China was studying America. Every factory visit, every technology transfer, they were taking notes. China's GDP in 1980, $191 billion, smaller than Italy. China's GDP in 2000, $1.2 trillion. Six-fold increase in 20 years. But the real explosion was just beginning. Manufacturing. China became the factory floor of the world. Education. Universities pumped out millions of engineers. Technology transfer. To access China's market, foreign companies had to share technology. Train Chinese workers. Western executives saw cheap labor. China saw technology acquisition. Same factories, different objectives. When China joined the WTO in 2001, they told you trade would bring democracy. Integration would change China. Here's what happened. China got the trade, kept the Communist Party, built the world's second largest economy. UN data shows China produces nearly 30% of global manufacturing, more than the US, Japan, and Germany combined. Look around your house, your phone, laptop, TV, appliances. Made in China is everywhere. That wasn't an accident. That was industrial policy executed over decades. China didn't want to be the world's factory forever. Huawei started selling telephone switches in 1987. Today, the world's largest telecom equipment manufacturer, building 5G networks across continents. DJI controls 70% of the global drone market. BYD sells more electric vehicles than Tesla, more than anyone on Earth. Western executives assumed China could copy but couldn't innovate. That assumption is dead. In 1996, the US sent 2 carrier groups to Taiwan. China couldn't do much about it. That humiliation burned. Today, world's largest navy by ship count, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, hypersonic missiles American officials admit they can't stop. The South China Sea? Artificial islands with airstrips and missile batteries in international waters. Nothing anyone can do about it. 2013. Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative, largest infrastructure project in human history. Ports in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Greece, East Africa, railways across Central Asia, power plants across 140 countries. Western critics call it debt trap diplomacy. But China offers something Western countries don't: actual infrastructure, built fast, without lectures about human rights. When China builds you a port, you remember who built it. Remember those treaty ports Western powers forced open? China now builds ports worldwide, on its own terms. Remember the railways foreigners built to extract resources? China now builds railways across continents. Remember the indemnity payments that crippled China? China is now the world's largest creditor to developing nations. The patterns aren't coincidental. Xi Jinping set a deadline, 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic. 1949 to 2049, a 100-year plan. The transformation is complete. The West created this, not the Chinese rise. Chinese people did that through sacrifice. But the motivation, the burning determination to never be humiliated again, that came from the Opium Wars, the burned summer palace, 8 nations occupying Beijing, a century of being carved up and dismissed. When Western politicians express surprise at China's military buildup, they're ignoring history. A nation invaded multiple times in 110 years builds a military. That's not aggression, that's trauma response. When Western economists wonder why China won't democratize, they're ignoring history. Why would they adopt the political system of the countries that humiliated them? This isn't justification, it's explanation. You've watched this entire transformation. When you were doing Cold War duck and cover drills, China was learning to feed itself. When Nixon went to Beijing, China was taking notes. When you saw Tiananmen on CNN, China was just getting started. When they told you China would democratize after joining the WTO, China got rich and built something different. From the ruins of 1949 to the second largest economy on Earth, you witnessed the most dramatic national transformation in modern history. World Bank data shows 800 million people lifted from poverty since 1981, more than double the US population. The largest poverty reduction in human history. That didn't happen by accident. The century of humiliation is over. The century of rejuvenation has begun. And now you understand why.